Right, here's the thing. Recording YouTube videos is actually a lot more difficult than I anticipated. So this is like my third attempt at trying to record this video. I had a whole script for this video, but I just cannot, for the life of me, deliver this properly. So I'm just going to try and riff this. It's probably going to be really, really rambly, and I apologize in advance. But anyway, hello. My name is Sam. I'm a freelance filmmaker based outside Belfast in Northern Ireland. And for the last decade, I've been doing everything from flying drones for film and TV to weddings to event and corporate gigs. And more recently, I've been trying to make a name for myself as a documentary DP. So today, I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys about approaching unplanned shoots. They're sort of the bread and butter in my part of the world. A lot of the production companies that will hire me for a shoot will sometimes not have all the information, or the client themselves just doesn't really know what it is that they want. So it's up to me to kind of figure that out on the day. Being able to do these things effectively is kind of the thing that will probably get you rehired on a lot of shoots. And I mean, I've been able to make a career out of it. So I just wanted to pass on a bunch of tips and tricks that I have learned over the last years to you guys. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is to determine what it is exactly that you are filming. For me, about 90% of the time, whenever I'm sent off to film a gig, the producer or the director isn't going to be there with me. It's usually just me, my equipment, and the client. So the first thing that I do before I even start to film anything, before I even start to build up my camera, is to go find my point of contact or the client, whoever's going to be with me on the day, and just introduce myself. It's really important that you do this because it just builds rapport instantly with that person, and they're going to be with you for the majority of the day. They're going to be the person that you need on side with you for the day, because they're going to be the ones probably grabbing people for you to interview, or they're going to get you access into particular buildings so that you can complete the shoot. It's just basic common courtesy. Just say hi, just be nice. You don't have to force it, obviously, but it is just a really important aspect of the whole job. So when I'm chatting with the client and building up my camera, I'm just asking them general questions like, how many interviews are we going to have today? Do you think we're going to be interviewing more than one person at a time? Because that's going to inform the equipment that I'm going to bring with me, whether I need extra lav packs, or is it better for me to just hand a shotgun mic to the client whilst I'm recording and they can point at the talent whilst we're interviewing them. I'm trying to figure out, are we having to move across buildings? Do I need to bring all my lighting equipment with me? Am I just keeping most of it in the car? It's just having that general chit chat with them to figure out what it is exactly that you're filming, what you need to bring with you. And ultimately, I'm just trying to build up a picture of the day in my head and figure out what equipment I should bring, what equipment I should leave, and how much coverage that I'm going to need to record on the day. Because whenever I pass that back on to the production company, I want them to be able to be confident in the knowledge that I have captured enough for them to put an edit together. So next up, we have working with the available light. Whenever I arrive at a location to film in, the first things that I'm doing is I'm looking where the windows are, if there's any lighting fixtures in the room, if there's any overhead lights that I'm going to maybe turn off or maybe use to try and shape the light in the room. I'm trying to figure out where the sun is going to come in and how all of that is going to interact with the space, and more importantly, the subject, and how that's going to affect the image. I think it's a really essential skill to learn quite early on in your career, because it trains your eye to just naturally look for beautiful light in a space, whether it's soft light coming from a window to use as the key light for your interview frame, or maybe the shadows that are playing on the back wall. It just opens up a lot more creative options whenever you are thinking about light in this way, and it just helps add a lot more depth and of your own creative voice to your images. I guess the real key point that I'm trying to get across here is that you don't just have to settle for the light that is just instantly in a space. What I'm trying to say is that if there's overhead lights and it's causing an odd color cast on someone's skin, you can ask to turn those off. Or if there's too much light bouncing into your room, you can close some blinds or curtains if there are any to try and shape the light that's coming into the room. Or if you're outside and you're trying to get someone deliver a piece to camera and the light is a bit too harsh, just ask them if they can move into the shade. Really what you're trying to do is exert as much control as possible over the available light, so that way you're just trying to get the most out of what is just naturally there. Whenever you're on these kind of unplanned shoots, I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of just following the action and grabbing whatever looks good. But in order to make a compelling edit, you should be thinking about shot variety. A good rule of thumb for covering a scene is to grab a good mix of wides, mediums, and tights. But I would also say take it a step further and have a think about how a scene actually unfolds. What I mean by this is think about it maybe more like an editor rather than a camera operator. You should be trying to get a really nice establishing shot to give context to the location that you're filming in. You're going to want to try and capture a good number of GVs or general visuals. These are shots that can sit anywhere within that scene. If you're filming a key person, you're going to want to try and introduce them with a really nice strong frame. And as well, if that key person is doing an activity, whether they are in the middle of a meeting or they're at the gym or making a coffee, you're going to want to try and capture them doing that activity in as many different angles and focal lengths as possible. For me personally, my own preference, instead of thinking in wides, mediums, and tights, is to think more along the lines of establishing shots, key character moments, and detail shots. This distinction just gives me a bit more freedom in my brain to maybe approach it in a different way, where an establishing shot could be done on a longer lens, maybe like a 70 to 200 rather than at the 24mm end of my 24 to 70, or maybe trying to get a detail shot on a 24mm or a 16mm, for example, just to like really widen it and exaggerate it. But again, this is just personal preference. It's just whatever feels right, and as long as I know that I have 4 to 5 good shots of each type, establishing shots, character shots, and detail shots, I know that I should be covered for a small scene later on down the line. Following on from my previous point, one of the easiest ways to improve your scene coverage is to recognize repeatable actions. So these are things where your subject is able to do it more than once. So whether they are pouring a coffee, walking through a door, they're working out at the gym, or maybe even making a painting, these are things that you can ask them to stop and start at multiple points. This gives you the freedom to start on a wide and establish where they are. You can then punch in and grab some details of whatever it is that they're doing with their hands. You can move to an over-the-shoulder shot. Don't be afraid to ask them to stop and start a particular activity, because it gives you the freedom and more flexibility in your edit if you capture this now rather than needing it later on down the line. Being able to identify this one thing gives you so many more options for your edit, and it allows your footage to feel a lot more natural rather than rushed. Realistically, most of the footage that you capture during these repeatable moments is not going to make the final cut, but I always find it's better to have it and not need it. Next up, you need to adapt your coverage based on the shoot type. Not all shoots are the same, that kind of goes without saying. How you cover a documentary is going to differ completely from how you cover an event, let's say. In terms of events, you're going to be shooting a lot more instinctively. You're just going to try and find nice frames, capture action as it's happening, people laughing. With event coverage videos, you're generally just trying to capture the highlights of the day and sort of put together a compelling edit just to show people what that's like. Sure, you might grab a couple of little small interviews or vox pops here and there, but the general idea with events is that you're just trying to make it look as fun and engaging as possible. And so a lot of the time you're throwing away the concept of building a scene. You're just trying to capture really nice looking shots. Documentaries, on the other hand, require you to think in scenes. Here, you really need to consider how each moment is going to fit into a larger narrative. I always find when I'm filming a documentary, I just keep a couple of simple questions at the back of my mind. Things like, is this shot establishing something? Is this moment building into a larger part of the story? Or even, do I have enough footage and coverage to create a whole scene in the edit? A little bit of forethought now about these things helps to just inform your shot variety, help you tell a more cohesive story, and ultimately just give you more options whenever you sit down to edit everything later. So you might have heard of the saying, being in the right place at the right time, but what if I told you that as a filmmaker, you need to be in the right place ahead of time? It might sound like I'm asking you to unlock some kind of superpower or something, but really it's about pattern recognition and being able to figure out that something is going to happen before it actually does. Like most of the things that I've talked about today, this is the kind of skill that you learn with practice and repetition. So it's not the kind of thing that you just learn overnight and just suddenly wake up having the ability to do one day. But Just anytime that you're out shooting an event, just keep an eye out, keep an ear out for things that you see happen time and time again. One of the best examples of this I can give is that at a charity event or a wedding, let's say, there will be groups of people who have been chatting and there will be a natural lull in the conversation, so energy levels drop down. But I always keep an eye and an ear out for other members of that group who've maybe been away at the bar or have been chatting with other friends who've now gone to rejoin the group. And I know from experience that whenever they do, energy levels are going to come back up. Someone's going to inevitably crack a joke. Someone is going to start laughing. So what I do is that I position myself ahead of time so I'm able to capture that moment as it unfolds before that person has even got there. When you practice this skill enough, you're going to end up developing a sort of sixth sense for when something interesting is going to happen. And whenever you feel that little bit of like intuition sort of tugging at you and calling your name, don't hesitate, move, change your angle and get the shot. But by the same token, if you're already at the best spot, or maybe you can't move to a new location in order to capture whatever is unfolding, it's better to just have the conviction to hold that shot where you are. It's so much better to have a shot taken from a slightly worse angle than to miss it entirely because you were moving. So there you go, guys. I hope that by applying some of these tips that you're able to get great shots on your future unplanned shoots. The real key to all of this is to just sort of stay adaptable and really just try your best to think ahead of time with the time that you've been given on a shoot, and I guess really open yourself up to sort of unplanned moments as they happen on a shoot. And of course, if you guys have any suggestions and tips about how you go operating on unplanned shoots, please do leave it in the comments below. Even after 10 years, I'm still learning new things, and I'd love to learn from you guys as well. But otherwise, that's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.